Welcome back to Have a Bash Homestead, the place where we got an idea one time to start a homestead from scratch with no experience or no clue what we were doing, but 3 years in and we're still standing. The weatherman said we were in for a week of clouds. That, thankfully, was a lie. But for some reason, despite the sun shining, on Monday, it was one of those mornings where I just felt overwhelmed with all the jobs. I think it's because I set out to first sort out the polytunnel, which, again, is one of the most boring jobs. So I had to move all the citrus trees from this side over to the other side so that I could move the shelves with the seeds on to the brightest side of the polytunnel. My problem in the polytunnel is that this is the only space, aside from the house, that I have to set seeds off. And with the amount of seeds I'm sowing, it soon fills up. Especially because I can't put anything onto the bottom because the mice always run raid it. This polytunnel though was here when we moved here, and we found some old pictures of the place when it was first done, so we think it's about 15 years old. It's in great need of a clean, but because our lawn gets so waterlogged over winter, we can't actually stand on it yet, let alone use a jet wash anywhere near it. It has holes in it where the mice have chewed it, and it's a bit rusty in places, but it still works really well and does a good job. It's better than not having one. The only downfall is that the pear tree on the outside is now 15 years old and it's ginormous, so it casts a shade over this half of it in the summer. We do plan to get a new cover for it in the next few years because the company still make them, thankfully, but that will either be the back end of this year or next year, I think. We have plans to extend the kitchen garden into the front paddock at the other side of the stables and create a gateway in the laurels to connect the two gardens. In there will be the strawberry planters you've seen in the other videos, some blueberry fruit cages, and a couple of more new polytunnels where we're going to grow our crops. This polytunnel then is going to be turned into a specific seed starting tunnel that will be lined with shelves the whole way round. All the beds will be removed and we'll pop a new cover on, and then maybe, just maybe, I'll have enough space for all my seeds and I won't have to do this horrible shuffle every year, about 5 times a year, until it gets warm enough to put out the pop-up polytunnels. So for this year, this is what we've got. And because this side is lighter, that's why I'm moving these little greenhouse within a greenhouse shelves to this side, because the seeds have been becoming a bit leggy because they're reaching for the sunlight. So all the food and herbs can go on the lighter side and all the flowers on the back because, well, flowers are a lot more resilient than food. I also annoyingly have to keep the citrus trees and figs and apricots in here for now because it's still getting quite cold during the night and we have had a couple of frosts in the last couple of weeks. So once the fig trees are producing little mini figs, you're not really supposed to expose them to any frost, so rather than having to fleece them all, then they're just going to stay in here. But once it's warm enough, they will go outside for the summer, and once again we'll have a bit more space in the polytunnel to move around, because don't know if you've noticed, but this is also my potting shed at the moment because we don't have a potting shed either, but that is in the plans. The citrus will also eventually have their own greenhouse or polytunnel, but again, all in good time. So this is one of the things you get used to when jumping in with no experience, having a feeling you need or want something to grow and harvest, buying it and then realising it has to have its own environment because it's got its own set of needs for it to perfectly thrive, like the citrus trees. Underestimating space requirements is something I do very well, and when you tie that with a whole load of stuff it, let's just do it and see what happens, you end up here. It's good though because you're actually building something you don't understand yet, and by throwing yourself in the deep end you learn lessons you can't always read in books, and making mistakes is a good way to learn because then you never forget. That's how I see it anyway. I have also had to do a tremendous amount of potting on this week Too much for one Saturday afternoon, so I've been chipping away at that each day, but I haven't done much filming of that because it gets incredibly boring once you've seen it once. After I moved the polytunnel around, I decided to tackle this unsightly area to make the place feel a little brighter. This is a result of being lazy last year. It was our potting table once all the crops went into the polytunnel that we were using in the beds and became a dumping ground for the equipment throughout the year. One of my goals this year is to be more proactive in keeping the garden tidy so we can avoid things like this as we go along. My gran always used to tell me tidy up as you go and everything will feel a lot less overwhelming, and it's so true, but sometimes when you're in the thick of it in the summer and harvest season begins, you just don't have tidying up at the forefront of your mind. But this year, hopefully, I'm going to be better at it. So these tables are actually going to be moved and some big pots put here instead with herbs and flowers in, which again in my head looks beautiful, but we'll see when it's finished. Another thing I want to get better at this year is trying to reduce the amount of overwhelm when it gets to harvest time, because I think I tried to grow so much last year with trying to grow enough food for a year, which I didn't do, but we are still eating food out of the freezer. But I think you get to a point where you try and stagger the crops, like you read everywhere, make sure you're success sowing and then you've got a steady supply of crops all year, which I did try to do, but I'm not sure if some of the conditions weren't right in the garden, and we did have a problem with flea beetle, so a lot of the crops ended up being ready at the same time anyway, despite me trying to succession sow, if that makes sense. So I need to get better at that, and I think one of the problems was it was just too dry last year because we had such a hot long summer. But this year I plan to set up irrigation systems in the garden as well to help with the watering aspect, which also takes up a lot of time. I imagine if you are a seasoned gardener, you know all this stuff and you can take it into consideration. It's like I say, you can read as many textbooks as you want, but there is no kind of game plan, so to speak, for your garden, because you just don't know what the weather's going to be like or what your soil conditions are going to be like or even how your crops are going to grow. So even though the textbook says it's this way, it isn't always this way because everybody's situation is different, which you kind of know when you come into gardening, but you don't really know to the full extent until you actually do it. So that is one of the biggest lessons, I think, for me, because it's getting used to everything being so random all the time. But as I say, I'm coming into year 4 now of basically running the garden and growing the food, and I am planning on growing more crops than ever this year, hopefully to store as much as possible over winter so that we don't have to buy as much from the supermarket. And I do feel now in the best position, given the past few years experience that I have, to be able to make those decisions and hopefully come out of the other end with a lot more food. On Tuesday, the sun shone for me all day, and I did notice a lot of these guys came out of their hiding places, which is really good because I have started to notice a couple of the aphids coming back into the garden, and I really want to start clearing all the dead bits out of the beds. And now I know that these guys are waking up, I feel happy in removing all that stuff, so I know I won't be throwing any ladybirds away in the process. So after I spent the morning potting on some peppers, I decided to remove the mesh from this bed of kale and spinach beet because I did notice some aphids on there and I wanted the ladybirds to be able to get to them. Now they're all coming out of their slumber because they will be in need of a good snack. And to be honest, I wasn't meant to keep this meshed for the whole of winter, but it was another one of those jobs that I forgot about. But the kale and the spinach beet have done really well under there. So I'm not sure if the mesh did actually make a difference. Plus, the pigeons love kale, so I'm kind of glad I did leave them on because the plants were quite small until the sun started coming out again. So after I did that, I decided to tackle the final bed in this section of the garden to get it ready for planting. Now I'm taking the sheep's wool off, and also this was celery and celeriac in here, which didn't, the celery grew well but the celeriacs didn't really form any root balls, and I think it's because I planted them in too late. But then the celery was killed off by a frost, so I didn't get to eat it anyway, so that's another lesson learned. Now I'm not sure what I'm going to sow in here because it does get shaded quite quickly in the summer. So I'm thinking I might direct sow some radish or spinach or chard because they grow quite well in a shady spot, but I'm not 100% yet. I do have some to transplant out, but once again I'm worried about the mice because they do have access to the beds. Wednesday was another good day. Despite the lack of sunshine, we finally got started on sorting some of the fruit bushes out and changing their locations. We planted our fruit bush garden last year and we've still got around about 100 fruit bushes to go in. So today we focused on digging up the blueberries, which we're going to keep in pots because they like ericaceous soil, which is acidic soil, and we replaced them with currants. We also managed to get 15 aronia berries put in the hedge line to help increase the density of that, which will act like a natural barrier to the fruit bush garden and provide additional spaces for the wildlife too. We managed to sort 35 plants out today and give these ones a well overdue haircut, which might not sound like a lot, but it's a start on a job we've been desperate to do for months. We've got these plants as babies last year and have nurtured them ever since. Looking back now, we should have maybe put these bushes in trenches so the grass was kept at bay a bit better because they have turned out to be a nightmare to keep on top of. But as the ground is still too soft to rotivate with the machine and the bushes are already growing, we decided not to dig them up again this year, but to maybe try and cut back the grass and mulch it heavily to try and improve this situation getting out of hand again in the future. We do have all these to do though, which is going to take some time, and I think I'm going to wait for a dry day. Thursday was another beautiful day. It was warm and sunny and the birds were singing for most of the day, so it was a pleasure to be outside. I decided to follow on from yesterday and continue with preparing our blueberries. So we've now decided to keep all the blueberries in pots with an irrigation system set up, and we're going to put them in a big fruit cage in the front paddock. The blueberries we dug up yesterday, there were 10 there, and then we also have 18 top hat blueberries that we bought in the sale last year. I think they were £2.50 each, or maybe even £2 each, down from like £6. And we do also have some that we got from Morrison's, I think, that have been in the nursery over winter, just kind of developing their roots and growing into their own. Now, if you've watched our other videos, you know how I feel about keeping plants in pots for too long. As you can see from the size of the blueberries that we dug up yesterday, they did really thrive being in the ground because, I mean, they've just got more space to grow into. And they did give us a nice harvest of blueberries despite only being maybe 2 years old. They were tiny when they first went in the ground. So I'm putting them all in big pots, and these are going to be their forever homes. I would ideally like them in the ground, but I think because of the amount of fruit bushes we've got, we've decided that the best option to keep in a pot would be a blueberry because they like the acidic soil. So we potted on all of the blueberries today. I think we've got 18 top hat. We have 10 of the ones that we dug up yesterday, and then we've probably got about another 15 more. So we do have quite a lot of blueberries, but we do love them. So I think you just kind of get obsessed with getting the ones that you know you like. And again, it's a waiting game. So we got a lot of these plants last year as little babies, and a lot of them are already showing flowers, so we know we're going to get berries from them this year. That was one of the things that I didn't know before I started gardening, just to kind of highlight how much experience I didn't have. I didn't know that where there was a flower, the fruit would grow. Like, that is how disconnected I was from food. I just didn't know it. And I just remember learning that fact and being kind of like, wow, it makes so much sense. But I just don't know how I didn't even know that. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. So we do love blueberries, and that's why we want to make sure they're happy so that they can give us a nice bountiful harvest this year. My daughter absolutely loves them, and one of my favourite things about the summer is when the berries are ready and you literally go out, and as you're harvesting them before it gets too warm, you fill your tummies at the same time, and they are so tasty. And although some of these plants may still be small now, they will supply us with, just so much fruit with a lot less looking after when they're a few years old. And that's one of the beauties of it, because we know that we're doing the hard work now and we will reap the rewards in years to come. Thank you for joining us for another week on the homestead. We hope you enjoyed watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it, and we'll see you in the next one.